You've had Wendy's nugs dipped in sauce, but have you had them covered in sauce? Wendy's new saucy nugs take the crispy and spicy nugs you love and turn them up to 11. Choose between flavors like buffalo or honey barbecue, garlic parm, or if you're a real heat seeker out there, you can try spicy ghost pepper only on Wendy's signature spicy nugs. Listen, I'm going to dare you to do it. I dare you. That's 7 delicious ways to try the nugs that you already love. Pick a flavor. Grab some extra napkins and then grab a few more napkins and prepare to nug like you've never nugged before. For a whole new way to nug, it's got to be Wendy's at participating U.S. Wendy's.
All right. I'm sure our listeners just heard about Wendy's saucy nugs. Dude, every single time I listen to our pod, Wendy's saucy nugs. Every time. We're not here to talk about that.
I kind of want to go get one now.
I want to talk about. Are they good?
I don't know. I'm going to try getting them at some point because I just heard it so much on our pod.
Someone has to have gotten them after listening to this podcast.
It's true. Yeah. If you have,
whoever's
let us know.
out there, Hop Water. We want to be sponsored by Hop Water. Hop Water, come talk to us. This stuff is good. All right. I digress. Panic, not panic. I want to go first. There's two sides to this coin. This question's going directly to you. Mendoza's toughness, unbelievable. Blood on his shirt, like ridiculous. Mm-hmm. However, is this sustainable?
No. It's never sustainable when a quarterback takes that many hits.
Okay, but like also, didn't Jack Plummer get literally torched for an entire season?
I mean, also true. Also a factual statement. I'm going to look that up. I'll look that up for next week. How many times Plummer got sacked last year and the rate at which he got sacked, and then compare it to this week.
Yes, I would like to know that.
Yeah. But yeah, it's the toughness thing's rough. It's
he is getting hit all the time.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me. You know what I noticed with him that was so much fun with watching Rodgers on Monday night was that Fernando kind of has that like quick sling that Rodgers has, where he's under pressure, but he just slings the ball out. I saw that and I was like, man, Fernando is that dude for us. He really is.
He just needs a little bit of protection.
Just needs a little bit of protection. Why, if he's that dude, why do we keep taking him out when it matters most?
If I had the answer to that question, like, don't get me wrong. I think there are moments where it's fine to use Chandler Rodgers, like the 2-point conversion play. I think was a solid move. I thought that was creative, and we needed the points. It couldn't be just a flat play, just because we weren't executing even our base plays well enough that game on offense. So yeah, throwing a creative play here and there. I don't mind him running the RPO like within the 10 yards, just give another guy for the defense to worry about. Don't mind that at all. But like, man, those final 3 downs before we ended up with Coe's missed field goal just does not make sense to me. Just flat out, those 3 play calls do not make sense to me. Like, why are we playing for the field goal 30 yards out with like over 2.5 minutes to play? Like, that even if we score the 3, they're going to get the ball back. And then, at some point, either before the 2-minute warning or after the 2-minute warning, and they'll still have all that time left. Like, why aren't we trying to even get as close as we possibly can for Coe to hit the field goal instead of just like within his range? It honestly did not make sense to me, particularly because like it's not like we went outside either. We just kept running like halfback dives and like inside zone. Like Rodgers is pretty fast. I don't think he's elite like Sam Jackson speed, but he's pretty quick. Like why are we running him between the tackles on an RPO? Like,
dude, we do the same thing with Mendoza, which blows my mind.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if it's like part of the RPO and that he's obligated to run if he pulls the ball back from the running back.
Right.
But there's multiple times in the game where I see him and it looks like a designed run for the quarterback. I'm like,
Yeah.
is this dude not getting hit enough?
yeah.
What is the point? I don't understand it.
I mean, I guess there's an argument to be made for you just keeping the defense honest that every time you do run an RPO, it's not only a handoff or a pass, that you still have to account for that third element. But yeah, it does not make sense in that regard. But I do want to give an opposite view of the play calling as well, because looking back at the game, everyone's upset about like Blesh's play calling and his tendencies and so on. And of course, we've just talked about some of the play calls that just does not look right at all. But there are some things I did want to talk about, which is how many dimensions our offense has is very limited right now because we don't have a guy that can take the top off. If we don't have a guy that takes the top off, then the defense sits into the box, right? When they're sitting into the box, which means we're not stretching the field vertically. So what is the best way to create space? We gotta wiggle the horizontal left and right. And I think that's kind of what the game plan was, using those jet sweeps early. Nam and I had this discussion about like, why are we using the jet sweeps if there's no like payoff play, right? Like if that's the setup for something, where is the something that comes after the setup, right? Like it used to be in the Madden plays where you had like a play with a little link on it, and it's like that's the play you used a couple times, and then you used on the following play it looks like the same play, but it's like a different version, right? And that's your link play. I think we saw that in the Pitt game. I think Blesh used wiggling horizontally to a very, very good effect using the jet sweeps. And then what resulted in that is that Jack Hendry's touchdown pass up the seam. Because what they did was, if you notice, he fakes the sweep handoff, then turns, looks at the wide receiver, fakes the wide receiver screen, which was already there in previous plays too, then plants his foot and darts it right up the middle to Jack, who gets it in for the touchdown. And you see the defense shift from left to right because they're worried about the jet sweep, because we've done that with Mikey. We've handed it off to him a couple times. They were also worried about the screen plays because we were banking on them crashing down hard to work off the screen plays, which they had been doing at that time. So they're spread out left and right, which opened up that middle channel for him to make that throw to. And I think we're being creative in that regard because we don't have a natural guy where you can say run a seam route and take a safety with you, or make the two safeties decide whether one of them's going to come with you. Like we don't have that. So that's what we're working off of. And I think that's what's also resulted in a little bit of our run game not being that effective. And that's why we try to use the outside run very sparingly, because that is our most effective run. But by using inside run, keeping the guys inside the box and then running it outside on a counter, that's just my football head running of like, all right, it's a chess match, right? So it's like, what are you going to try and bait them to do? What do you want to bait them to constantly do? And that's kind of what I landed on, was outside of a few egregious play calls, I think overall the game plan was solid, considering the injuries and the spots that we don't have in terms of weapons.
Listen in. Starbucks. It's a great day for coffee.
Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
I actually wrote down that this bullet point. I'm going to read it to you. This is in my notes from watching the game.
Yep.
I just said the defensive playbook seems easy against the Cal offense. You just throw bodies up front and you don't respect the big downfield pass threat. We saw it against Auburn in the second half when they adjusted, and we've seen it every game since.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very clear to me that that's what Pitt was doing. Mm-hmm. And we did have some good tunnel screens. We did have a few ways to sort of break it, but and I saw this week we saw Josiah Martin, I think, more than we've seen as a speed threat from a running position. But they're just, to your point, I totally agree. Is there not, anyone that can take the top off? And that's so funny because I feel like Tron was actually able to do that for us last year a little bit. Like he's done it a little bit this season against Miami. He had that big downfield catch, but he was the guy last year that I feel like, though Jeremiah, obviously we really missed Jeremiah Hunter. And I know we were missing Tobias and
Keon.
So the injuries, I mean, it gets me to one of my big questions is, where do you land on this? Because I could see two worlds again, where one, if you're upset and you're like, I'm over it, it's injuries be damned, right? Mm-hmm. Injuries happen to every team. There's no team in college football that gets through the entire season unscathed. Mm-hmm. So I think that's totally justifiable if you think that way. The other world is you could go back and say the O-line struggles. We haven't had the O-line together as a full unit. We're missing our top two wide receivers.
Our top running back.
I don't think Jaden can run with this offense line. In fact, we've seen Jaden fully healthy, and he cannot run behind this line. The O-line is rough. But yeah, I would love to get your thoughts.
I think in terms of the O-line, here's the thing. We faced probably the three, like I think Miami and Florida State in terms of talent and body size on the defensive line is probably at the top that we'll face all season. I think Pitt's defensive front seven actually is pretty solid. I think they're the tier in the ACC like right below them. I think Clemson and Florida State, Miami are probably at the top in terms of pure talent, right? Not just not like their wins-loss. In our offensive line, I honestly at this point can't grade them higher than like a C-, right? I think there's moments where they look like they're average or above average, and then there's most of the time they look slightly below average. And that's where the matchups happen, and that's where we've lost. There's an argument to be made moving forward, starting with NC State, that our offensive line might start to look more dominant because of the types of bodies and the defensive fronts that we're going to be facing moving forward. This was probably our toughest bunch, like Auburn, Miami, Florida State, and then Pitt. And so I'm kind of interested to see if the narrative changes in that regard, if the execution changes in that regard, if the execution and the efficiency of our run game happens, just because in terms of size and all of those talent considerations, we start to look a little bit better than the teams we're playing, or we're going to be on par with the teams that we're playing. And so, yeah, it's an interesting like thing. This feels like the most talented team that Wilcox has had, because we're in every single game. We have yet to be like fully blown out, regardless of what talent we're playing. And I know that's probably where Wilcox's frustrations lie too, a little bit, because we were in every single game.
Clearly.
Yeah, clearly.
Clearly.
What is it? A minus 8 point differential in our three losses? That's insane. Minus 8 in 3 losses. Just incredible. So like there's I think going back to what you were saying, there's another version of this where you're kind of looking at this going, is this like year one of Wilcox in this new age of football with the transfer portal and NIL? And just a team coming together and like with what do you remember what the number was from when we were watching Golden Era? It was like 50 something new
Yeah, I think
faces
it's
in that
50
room.
or so.
So we knew it was going to take time. I don't think we were a team that could absorb that many transfers and just go immediately because of the change, particularly on the offensive side, because it's a new offensive coordinator, right? And new lingo, new team, so on. So there's a little bit of that. But that's not to say that if you want to say, but it's his 7th season or it's 8th season and so on. I like Andy. That's totally within reason for you to think that way. But this might be the real first team that we've had talent-wise after the change in the portal, after all the NIL stuff, actually getting all that squared away and having a really, really competitive team. The comp I'm going to make here is to Mark Madsen's first year in Berkeley last year. The team didn't look like they had an identity. They didn't know where they were. Guys didn't know what their roles were to a certain degree. And we were losing games that we were competitive in, right? Like when we played San Diego State down in SoCal, that looked like a competitive game. And then we just didn't have it towards the end of the game to close it out. But then after the Arizona State loss at home, apparently the team had a meeting, players only. And then that's when they figured it out. And they figured out their roles, they figured out the team, and they fully bought into the moment. And then we were winning games the rest of the way, enough to make a bit of a run up the table. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm kind of hoping for happens here. Wilcox mentions it in that presser, right? He's like, we need to make winning plays. We need to learn when to make winning plays. I don't think any of his last 3 years worth of teams have been in a position to make winning plays like that. I think in competitive games, we're usually getting blown out, or teams that we're better against, we're beating them soundly. So these are the moments that are going to learn. And I think now we're going to, hopefully, we'll get a few of those moments where it turns the opposite way, where we look at that Nate Burrell play and we're like, yep, he made the right call. He makes the tackle. They turn the ball over on downs, One guy makes a better block. It's 6-man protection and it's a 4-man rush, and we still get the blocking assignments right. Nando has like 8 seconds to throw and throws the dart. Like, I feel like that's the hope, is that we get to see those plays play out once more, and that the guys have learned and they're going to make that adjustment for the second half of the season.
Yeah, I think that is the crux of this emotion that a lot of people are going through, because it's those two things that I was really struggling with, where what this game forced me to do was to essentially say, somewhat like you said, Rob, but not explicitly, that this season, unfortunately, is not the one we're going to take that leap in. And that the opportunity was there, but we weren't ready to step into that opportunity. And that next year will be sort of the one that you circle and say, okay, that's where our expectations are. The question is that I think has the program awareness been raised enough where that frustration will grow and be loud enough with a 7-5 season? I don't know. I don't know if the job, I know the financials don't make sense, but there's a lot happening that has elevated the eyeballs and the attention, and you have a chancellor that uniquely understands the value proposition of football. So I agree. I sort of convinced myself, hey, Fernando's that dude. I was really frustrated. So for anyone that's out there saying, how are these guys not saying they've had enough after 8 years? Like, please don't think that I wasn't sitting there having some of those thoughts, because they do come up.
It's been 72 hours since the game too.
Yeah. So they do come up, and they're all completely valid. I get it. But I think I'm sort of the mindset where, I don't know what to do with the offense. I do not know. And I don't think it's excusable to have had the opportunity to have hired this many offensive coordinators and have really struggled with those hires as much as we have.
Yep.
I think back to the Spav hire and And then obviously this promotion and man, I don't know. I can't. If anyone came to me and said, "Can you possibly give Wilcox another hire at OC?" I don't think you can. I think that's enough. So you're basically betting that Blush like kind of figures something out and gets everything moving together towards the end of the season, which I do think is really possible. And then you're sort of lining up next year saying, okay, Fernando is no longer young. You have this team that's grown up together that hopefully you're keeping these pieces. I think the big what if is sort of the how much movement will there be with the transfer portal? How many players are going to be moving? I don't think Jaden Nott's sticking around, no matter what. I mean, if he wants to play another year of football, I don't think he's going to be a Cal. I mean, like, good for him. He stuck it out. He did his thing. I don't hold that against him. But that's the crux for me is, do you look at the season and say this should have been the season? Because if I go back to the preseason prediction pod, you and Trey said 9 wins. I said 8 wins. That's like the highest win total that we projected on this team in a long time. And I actually skipped last season from saying 8, and I said 7, right? And then this year I was like, okay, yeah, this is the year. This is where I see it. We go in the ACC. And the schedule, as we argued about last week, the schedule has been, in retrospect, much easier than I think we thought it was going to be at the beginning of the season. And I think you can make a very good case that this team should be 5-1, 6-0 with a average plus coaching staff. Like, I get that argument. But I also think that I still want the person in charge that understands uniquely, like just the way that Wilcox was able to talk through the clip that we played earlier and also talk through his press conference and understanding and literally outlining the tendencies of the quarterback, of how they play. And like to your point about having the time left, he knew that that offense wasn't going anywhere. I mean, I think he had that confidence, different from the Miami game.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I think we give the ball back there. Let's say the field goal doesn't have the high snap and goes in. You know, I do think that Cal probably walks away with a win at the end of the day. I just feel like
our defense was playing lights out.
Our defense was too good. It wasn't the defense that we had seen against Miami. Mm-hmm. All right, I'll bring us back. I guess I'm just going to ask you real rapid fire, Rob. So, like, going back to what we just talked about, it's a lot about high level season-long coaching. How do you feel, panic versus not panic? So where are you at? Are you panic or are you not panic? Head coach, overall coaching staff.
I'm still not panicked. I think that, look, we've been talking about how, like, this is the hardest Cal season in a long time, right? But also, flip side of that argument, this is the most competitive Cal team in terms of who they're playing against, like their schedule and like how the games have turned out in also a very long time. 6 games in, and there's not a single game we were blown out, whether they were top 25 or not. Like, the games we were supposed to win, we were in control of. The games that we were underdogs in, we made a game out of, and we took it down to the wire. In all 3 cases. So, I think it's just, this is, to steal what you say, right? It's just the pains of having a competitive team, but not a winning team. Like, you know how you talk about that when we talk about 6-6, and you're like, it's just the pains of have 6-6. You're gonna look back and you're gonna be like, you know, that's a game we should have won. That's a game we should have won. That's a game we should have won. But this feels more real than that. Like, I don't think this team's gonna end up 6-6, but that feeling's gonna still remain because of how competitive this team is. And I think that's also the biggest frustration that Wilcox has, is he knows how talented of a team he has. He looks at the games, he's like, we were competitive in every single one, and we just couldn't get the W. You know, and that's why he mentions that whole thing of like, would it feel better if, you know, if we lost by 40 and weren't in games? Like, everyone's more emotionally charged right now because every single game that we've played, we had a chance to win or have won. Not early in the game, legitimately, like as time expired on all 3 of those losses. So, yeah, that's why I'm not in panic. Not at all. I think coming home for the next 2 or 3 out of the next 4 weeks is going to be huge for this team.
What about season overall?
In terms of like where we end up?
Yeah.
A little bit of panic just because of I expected a little bit more. I expected 4-2. Like at the very least, by midway point. But the wrenches are thrown where Florida State's not as good as we thought they were, but Pitt's also better than we thought they were. So it's like that's just the way the cookie crumbles.
I mean, we've looked at it by segments. 3-1.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're 0-2.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta win the others. Like, these are must-win, must-have games.
Right? I mean, we're gonna be favored in these games. We've won every game we've been favored in. So, like, if you want to go by Vegas odds, we've won every game we were favored in. We upset one that we were not favored in, which was Auburn. And then we lost 3 that we weren't favored in. So we're on pace in terms of that regard. I think we're favored against NC State by like 14 or something like that. So
14.
I think if we can beat NC State by double digits, I think people will come around a little bit more and be like, all right, the ship's settled a little bit. Everyone's not going to be back on board and be like, we're going to the championship game. But, I think the waters will settle a little bit. The turbulent, time and the discourse, I think will settle a bit.
Okay.
What about you?
All right, so we're panicked. We're panicked on Mendoza's toughness.
Yep.
We're not panicked on the season overall.
No.
We're not quite panicked on coaching.
No.
Okay.
Where are
All
you?
right. No, I think very panicked on Mendoza's toughnness. If he takes this many hits, there's no chance that he's gonna make it the whole year.
Yep.
I do think the side effect of that would be I would love to see Chandler Rogers actually throw the ball because we know he did it well at North Texas. We saw it firsthand against us, so he's fully capable of doing it. I don't know why he has not done it. Season overall, yeah, I think I'm like I think for the first time I might downgrade to 7. I just don't know if we're gonna run. What we'd have to go 5-1 in order to hit my 8.
Yep.
So
basically, lose to SMU.
Lose to SMU, as we said. I mean,
we win everything else.
That would be great.
That'd be a sucky way to end, though. Imagine going on a 5-game win streak in the second half of the season, then a final game of the season you lose.
I'll take it.
You'll take it.
You know I'd take that.
Yeah.
And then I think coaching, I'm more panicked on the offensive side of the ball. I think I find myself saying, how are we back here a little bit? Is it Bo Baldwin? Like, dude, just like Bo Baldwin, Musgrave, freaking Spav, Blesh. It's like the same thing over and over and over again. We're like in this movie that just keeps replaying, but like with slightly different characters and actors. And we're just like, oh, hooray, we finally got a new lead. And then it's like basically the same show. And you're like, wait, what? But there's new lead actor. It should be different. And it's no, just the script's exactly the same. All right, we'll move on. So give me your players of the game.
I mean, look, defense, I think it has to be Noel. To continue that streak of interceptions, I think CBS actually today put out their midseason All-American list, and Noel is listed at starter at corner. So across from Travis Hunter, which is, it's pretty high praise. So he's on that trek. He's firmly in the trek. Like, if he continues this up, I don't think he can continue the interception rate. But just his defensive prowess, like in that form that he has right now, if he can continue it, I think he's a surefire All-American by the end of the season. But yeah, Noel, you got one for defense?
Oh man, I thought Teddy had a pretty good bounce back game.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of good plays, sacks, pass deflection. Especially like with McCullough out, I thought that Cade is just everywhere.
Yeah.
And like coming off, I mean, we saw him on the sideline. He's crying after Miami. I was kind of worried, and no worry.
Nope.
He's definitely the most fun linebacker for me to watch since Evan Weaver. Like, bar none. It's
and he plays with that swagger a little bit too, right?
He does.
He does. I have a great picture of him smiling at Cam Ward when he's like lined up across from him.
Yeah.
Like this.
Oh yeah. You saw that. That is wild. You're like, are you okay?
Yeah, just sicko.
I think like So those would be my two. I'm actually just going to choose Cam Sidney though, because that play was amazing. DBs are DBs because they don't really have hands. I mean, we saw this you see this in the NFL. It's like, who was it? Jameson Williams that got like hit in stride and let it hit his shoulder.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't putting his hands out to meet the ball. I was like, damn, that's at the NFL. That's the NFL level. And like Cam on that ball breaks in and still has to go full extension, hand catch, swoop, takes it away. That was an amazing play. And that's what brought us back in the game.
Yep. The one I'll add one more little asterisk. Not play of the game, but for me, play of the game. That Woodson hit where he crashes down into the box on that wide receiver and just lays him out.
Was that early?
Midway, I think.
Yeah, I know this play.
But oh god, that hit was like when we were watching it, Tokyo, you hear the entire place go ooh. That was probably the hardest hit I've seen a Cal player make this year, and probably in a while. So
harder than the Marcus Harris hit.
Ooh, yeah, that one's a little tough. I think angle wise and just the picture I got afterwards, Marcus Harris standing over him, kind of like the Robert Jordan over. I can't remember what the DB was. Tennessee. You know what picture I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, of course.
Has that view, has those feels. Offensively, I mean, the easiest answer here is to just go to Jack Endries. The man is turning out to be a star, an absolute star. Like, did you see that stat from like advanced analytics, like in terms of his top speed from the Miami game? So that Miami touchdown that he had, right, where he's like sprinting on the sideline. By next gen stats, that would have been clocked as the fastest run by a tight end, or top 4 tight end in the NFL this season.
It's actually, I had no idea.
And I saw that stat. Like, that's amazing. So yeah, he's turning out to be an absolute star, and I cannot be happy for the guy who was like a walk-on local kid. I see his dad every week at the games. Super nice guy. His name's Robert. So like, we have a little bit of that connection. Yeah, it's super cool. And just to see a local walk-on kid have that effect, I think, it's always nice.
I feel like I haven't actually picked Nando as the player of the game this season yet. I don't know if that's true.
I don't think so. I don't think we've ever picked a quarterback.
This was the game that I came away and he deserved it. Poor guy just gets hit over and over and over again. And I think at this point, Brock Osweiler is just surprised every time he gets back up.
Brock's pretty much watched all our games too. So.
I know. Him and Dave. It's so funny. Dave even said it on the call. And he's like, we pretty much called every single one of these games. I think that this game, Nando almost willed us there. He really did. And he has no time. He has no line. And he stands in the face of pressure and he makes a lot of really tough throws. So
he had a better stat line than Eli Holstein this week in terms of just the quarterback
stat line. I thought he
played
way better. Yeah.
So yeah.
Poof. I think we tied the bow on this one.
Yeah. All right. We're looking ahead to North Carolina State a little bit.
Well, tell me. I think they get whooped. They played Clemson last week, right? Or am I misremembered?
Let me check. NC State football. Yes, they played Clemson. They got whooped 59-35. Actually, that was a while ago. That was September 21st. They played Syracuse. Oh, that's right. I watched this game. They played Syracuse and Syracuse won 24-17. The week before they played Wake Forest and Wake Forest won 34-30. The week before they played Northern Illinois and they won 24-17. The week before they played Clemson and got beat 59-35. And
why are we favored by so much, Rob?
Because North Carolina State's not good.
but they're not bad.
I mean, it's just looking at
14 feels like a lot, right?
It's just looking at who they've played. You know, it's let me recheck the betting lines here. It's Cal by 9.5.
Okay.
So still 2 scores. But yeah, I mean, just look at who they've played. I mean, they played, top 25 Clemson. Of course, they got wrecked there. They play LA Tech by 10, and LA Tech, I think now is, they lost to New Mexico State in overtime. They beat Middle Tennessee. They lost to FIU. They lost to Tulsa. Yeah, so they're not having a good season either. They're playing teams that aren't that great. Like Wake Forest is, if not for us, probably at the bottom of the conference. And Syracuse, looked good and then hasn't looked good and then also looks good again and then hasn't looked good. So, it's just, yeah, they're 3-4, but it's like a very weird 3-4. So yeah, I think them not having, or Grayson McCall's out. So I think them not having Grayson McCall after they thought he'd be the starter for them, I think that has hurt a lot. They do have a stud wide receiver though. So I'm kind of afraid of that. But, we've boxed in top wide receivers pretty well this year. So Kevin Concepcion, he's really good, but I think we'll be all right. It's homecoming week, Andy.
Homecoming.
It's homecoming.
I know.
Noon at Memorial. Homecoming. You excited?
Is it noon or is it 12:30?
12:30, I think. Yeah, 12:30.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Eva's going to be there.
Awesome, because it's a day game.
Her
Yeah,
first
you can
game
make
of
it
the
work.
year.
Yeah.
Yep. It's her nap time, but I'm skipping. It's all good. It's all good.
It's all good. Well, one thing I'm going to plug here before we close. Right for California has merch dropping for the first time ever with Warriors World. And because we actually had this planned out to drop last week, but then we're dropping it this week because I told the Warriors World guy, look, it's homecoming. I think we could make a better push for this then. So that's what we're doing. It's dropping. By the time you hear this, it actually should be out in terms of the design and so on. So we won't talk about the design just in case it hasn't. But Andy's seen it. Andy, what do you think about the design?
I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to spoil anything, but I think that it's a moment in time that is forever. It's never going away, and it's the best. It's surprising that we haven't actually done that before, and
Yeah.
I think it looks absolutely sick.
Yeah. So they'll be coming out in hoodies, long sleeve shirts, and short sleeve shirts. The store up on Warriors World will probably open up later in the week, probably Friday, so you can get your orders in and purchase that. One also thing to plug regarding that is a portion of the proceeds will go to the basic needs part of campus. So it's going to help students that are food insecure and some of the other basic needs that they have. So that's where that's going. So it helps a good cause. You get cool merch. You'll get the Right for Cal branding on it along with Warriors World, which is probably the best, if not one of the best Bay Area sports merch folks you can get attire from. So, yeah, that's the plug.
Are you going to hook up anyone with a code or no?
Oh, no, we got no code, but what do you think? You want to hook up one of our listeners with a shirt? Should we do that?
Yep.
All right.
We absolutely should do that.
Okay. So we'll announce that next week. We'll announce how you can be a part of it next week. But yeah. So you're going to have to listen next week. This forces them to listen to us next week if you want to get in on a little giveaway for a t-shirt.
Love it.
But yeah, that wraps it up here on the Golden Bearcast. As always, you can find our written stuff at rightforcalifornia.com. You can find us on Twitter at Golden Bearcast. Email us, goldenbearcast@gmail.com. And if you are listening to us, you know where to find us. So that's it for this one. And as always, go Bears.
Go Bears.
Bing.